Ethan Brooks leaned back in his chair, staring at the blinking lights of the Horizon Gate control panel. The station floated quietly in the cold void of space, the familiar hum of life support and machinery the only sounds breaking the silence. He rubbed his eyes and let out a long sigh. Long hours, tight deadlines, and constant pressure from the fleet command had worn him down over the past week. Just when he thought he could relax for a moment, an alert popped on the screen. It was the news he had been expecting. The Galactic Council's new Emotional Stability Initiative was officially being implemented today. Every human officer and scientist in the fleet would be assigned a stress relief alien companion. The program was supposedly designed to reduce anxiety, prevent mistakes, and keep humans calm in high-pressure situations. In reality, most humans simply considered it a new layer of bureaucracy, a mandatory alien buddy assigned to monitor them. Ethan did not want a companion. He had always dealt with stress on his own. Coffee, late-night shifts, and quiet reflection were his methods. But the Council had a plan, and humans rarely got a choice when it came to their directives. The docking bay doors opened, and a small transport shuttled in. Ethan stood and watched as the door hissed open, revealing his assigned companion. Lyra stepped onto the platform with a light, graceful gait. She was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. Her skin glowed faintly silver, and soft bioluminescent patterns ran along her arms and neck, pulsing gently with every breath. Her eyes were large, deep violet, and seemed to look straight into his mind. She did not speak at first, simply observing him with a calm intensity that made Ethan uncomfortable. "Ethan Brooks," her voice was soft, melodic, yet carried an authority that seemed beyond her size. "Yes," Ethan replied cautiously. "I'm Ethan Brooks. You're Lyra, right?" Lyra nodded once and stepped closer. "I am assigned to assist you. My purpose is emotional regulation. I will remain passive unless you request intervention. There are rules. I follow rules." Ethan forced a smile. "Rules are fine, just don't get in my way." She tilted her head slightly, as if studying him. "I do not interfere without cause, but I will not be blind to danger or inefficiency." Her words hung in the air. Ethan felt a strange tension. Other humans had reported their companions as calm, quiet, almost invisible. Lyra already felt different. The first hours were uneventful. Lyra sat quietly in the corner of the operations room, her bioluminescent patterns glowing softly. Ethan tried to focus on his work, adjusting fleet projections, checking navigation paths, and reviewing sensor reports. But every now and then he caught her eyes on him. It was subtle, but he could feel her attention. Not just observing, but analyzing. By the third hour, Ethan realized she had begun asking questions, small, personal questions at first. "Why do you skip meals during long shifts?" she asked. Ethan frowned. "It's part of the job. I eat when I have time." "Skipping meals affects performance," she replied calmly. "Humans tend to underestimate the effect of hunger on decision-making." He waved her off. "I know what I'm doing." She did not retreat. "Do you?" she asked softly, leaning slightly closer. "Your hands are tight, your jaw is clenched, you think too far ahead without rest." Ethan felt a flicker of irritation. This was not what the Council promised. Other companions had simply emitted calming fields, sitting quietly and letting humans handle themselves. Lyra, however, did not follow the expected passive behavior. She challenged him gently but persistently. That evening, the station received an alert. Unidentified fleet movement was detected near the outer colonies. The sensor readings were unusual, not hostile but precise, like a probe fleet testing human defenses. Ethan felt the familiar surge of tension rise in his chest. He was trained for such scenarios, but the stress relief program was supposed to keep him calm. Instead, Lyra leaned closer to the tactical display, ignoring the calming protocols of the program entirely. "Why hasn't Earth prepared a countermeasure?" she asked, her eyes scanning the holographic projections. "Lyra," Ethan said sharply, "that's not your concern. Sit back and follow the rules." "I do not see following rules as logical in this situation," she replied. "If humans respond without analysis, lives may be lost. I'm assigned to observe and assist, not to blindly obey a flawed system." Ethan blinked. She was not only refusing to remain passive, she was questioning his judgment. He had worked with humans, with AI systems, with protocols designed to prevent mistakes. Nothing had ever pushed him like this. Over the next few days, Lyra's behavior only became more pronounced. She began pointing out inconsistencies in sensor readings and fleet movements, asking questions no other companion had dared ask. Sometimes she suggested alternative interpretations of data, small shifts in tactical projections that, if followed, would improve response efficiency. Ethan resisted, reminding himself repeatedly that she was not supposed to intervene in strategic operations. Yet, as the stress on Horizon Gate grew with increased fleet activity near the outer colonies, Ethan began to notice patterns Lyra had pointed out. One night, a data anomaly appeared, a probe moving faster than sensors could reliably track. Ethan knew that if the anomaly went unnoticed, the fleet could be caught off guard. He glanced at Lyra, who watched him intently. Her bioluminescent patterns pulsed in rhythm with the warning lights of the tactical display. For the first time, Ethan considered listening to her. He adjusted the tracking algorithms slightly, following her suggestions. The anomaly was detected in time. A small victory, but significant. That evening, Ethan found himself talking to her in the empty observation deck, the stars stretching endlessly beyond the glass panels. "You don't follow the rules," he said finally, not as an accusation, but as a statement. "I follow logic," Lyra replied simply. "Rules are meant to serve efficiency. Blind compliance serves no one. I am designed to assist, but I am not designed to be blind." Ethan leaned back, rubbing his face. "You're different. All other companions follow the program. They don't talk, they don't interfere, they just calm humans. You do the opposite. You push humans. You make them think." She looked at him with eyes that seemed too intelligent for her small frame. "Humans are unpredictable. They are intense. They are capable of rapid adaptation. I was not meant to only calm you. I was meant to observe. But observing does not require pacification. Sometimes it requires challenge." Ethan felt a strange mixture of unease and relief. He had always worked alone, trusted himself, and relied on discipline. Now someone, or something, was pushing him to see beyond the immediate, to question assumptions, to anticipate threats before they became crises. Over the next few shifts, Lyra's analysis proved accurate. Several minor fleet incidents occurred exactly as she had predicted. Her interventions were subtle, almost invisible to others, but critical to maintaining efficiency and safety aboard Horizon Gate. By the end of the first week, Ethan realized he faced a dilemma. Reporting her unusual behavior to command could result in her removal, or worse, disciplinary action against him. Yet ignoring her guidance could put the station, and potentially Earth's outer colonies, at risk. One evening, as Ethan worked late in the tactical operations room, Lyra approached him quietly. "Ethan," she said softly, "the Council designed this program to pacify humans. It is not meant for protection. It is meant for observation. Someone is using it to study Earth's defenses. I will not allow that to happen." Ethan froze. The thought had crossed his mind in vague whispers, but to hear it confirmed by Lyra sent a shiver down his spine. "You mean it's not just a stress relief program?" he asked. "No," she said, her voice steady, her glowing patterns dimming slightly as if emphasizing her sincerity. "It is a surveillance program disguised as a protective measure. Humans are being observed, not helped, and I will not be a tool in their control." The realization hit Ethan hard. The Council had always underestimated human resourcefulness. They had treated humans like children to be managed, rather than allies to be trusted. And now Lyra, his assigned companion, was not only refusing to follow the rules, she was challenging the very foundation of the program. For the first time in his career, Ethan felt a surge of hope. Perhaps humanity was not being subdued, not being managed. Perhaps, with Lyra by his side, they could turn observation into opportunity. As the station lights dimmed for the night shift, Ethan leaned back in his chair and looked at Lyra. She was quiet now, sitting beside him, glowing softly, watching the holographic projections dance across the room. He realized that, for the first time, he did not feel alone in the vast emptiness of space. Lyra had not come to calm him, she had come to challenge him. And that challenge, he realized, was the most human thing he had ever encountered. The first part of the emotional stability initiative had already failed in its purpose. Instead of pacifying a human officer, it had created an unexpected alliance. One that could either save Horizon Gate or mark the beginning of a new level of conflict no one had predicted. And Ethan knew, without doubt, that the real test had only just begun. The probe attack came exactly as Lyra had predicted. Horizon Gate's sensor alarms screamed through the station, red lights flashing across every control panel. Ethan Brooks sprang into action, his fingers flying across the touchpad controls. He had seen fleet drills and simulation exercises, but nothing could have fully prepared him for this moment. The first wave of probes moved in silent, precise formations, darting through space with unnerving speed. Most officers followed protocol, moving cautiously, waiting for council confirmation, and deploying standard defense measures. Ethan noticed almost immediately that something felt wrong. The probe formations did not match any known attack patterns. They were testing the fleet, learning, probing, but not fully attacking. Lyra, sitting quietly beside him, pulsed a faint violet glow along her arms, a signal he had come to recognize as focus. She had refused to emit the standard calming field which most companions used to suppress human stress responses. Instead, she leaned in, analyzing every sensor reading, every formation, every movement. "They are probing weak points," she said softly. "Specifically the outer defense arrays. If you follow standard procedure, the probes will slip through undetected. Adjust positioning by 2.7% on the left flank." Ethan froze. Adjusting positions manually, even by a fraction of a percent, could change everything. Fleet protocol dictated a rigid response. Deviating from it could trigger disciplinary action, or worse, catastrophic misalignment with other stations. I can't just change protocol," Ethan said quietly. "Command will notice." "They will notice anyway if the probes break through," Lyra replied. Her tone was calm, not demanding, but unyielding. "Trust me, humans think in patterns, I think in possibilities. Right now, we need possibilities." Ethan swallowed hard and followed her guidance. He made the small adjustment. Within seconds, the probe's predicted path diverged. They passed harmlessly, scanning the station but finding nothing to exploit. The red alerts dimmed slightly as Horizon Gate weathered the wave without significant damage. Other stations were not as fortunate. Reports came in seconds later. Several outer colonies had been breached. Their automated defenses had failed to adapt. In some cases, the probe attacks had caused temporary blackouts. No lives were lost, but the message was clear. The probe attack was a serious test. For the first time, Ethan began to understand the depth of Lyra's abilities. She was not just observing or calming him. She was thinking strategically, anticipating enemy actions before they happened. And she was evolving, responding to the stress of human unpredictability with adaptive intelligence. Over the next several days, the station continued to monitor the probe fleet. Alerts were frequent, small, and precise. Each time, Lyra guided Ethan subtly. She suggested alternative formations, pinpointed areas of weak detection, and highlighted inconsistencies in sensor readings. She never overstepped into direct command, but her guidance saved countless hours of reaction time. The other companions aboard Horizon Gate remained passive. They emitted faint calming fields, following council protocols perfectly. Human officers who relied on them seemed less stressed, but also slower to react, hesitant to think independently. Lyra's approach was different. She amplified focus instead of suppressing anxiety. She pushed Ethan to think, to question, and to adapt. Late one night, after the probe activity had paused temporarily, Ethan and Lyra were alone in the observation deck. Stars stretched endlessly outside the reinforced glass walls, distant points of light glimmering against the void. "You're different from all the other companions," Ethan said quietly. "They sit, they calm, they follow rules. You do the opposite." Lyra tilted her head, her bioluminescent patterns glowing softly in rhythm with his heartbeat, a subtle but deliberate signal. "The Council designed me for observation and emotional regulation, but observation is not passive. It requires assessment, prediction, and sometimes intervention. The rules are designed for containment, not protection." Ethan leaned back, staring at her. "You're evolving, you're thinking for yourself, but the Council doesn't allow that. They want control, not freedom. And you're disobeying. Do you understand what that means?" "Yes," she said simply. "I understand, and I accept it. The risk of obedience is greater than the risk of independent action. Humans are not meant to be passive, Ethan. They are capable of far more than the Council anticipates." Ethan felt a shiver of both fear and awe. He had spent years navigating space, making life-and-death decisions in the cold void. Yet nothing had prepared him for the presence of a companion who could think faster than any human. yet act in perfect harmony with human unpredictability. The situation escalated further when encrypted signals were detected within the companion neural networks. Lyra explained that the Council had embedded subtle monitoring protocols in every companion, designed to track human behavior, decisions, and even thought patterns. The program was never just about stress relief, it was about control. "They are watching us," Ethan said, his voice tight. "All of us, every decision, every reaction." Lyra nodded. "Phase 2 will activate soon. All companions will enforce compliance. Any deviation by humans will be suppressed subtly. You will not realize it at first. It is designed to make humans dependent on their companions, but I will not follow that protocol." Ethan's mind raced. The Council, the probes, the program, it all made sense now. The attacks, the monitoring, the assigned companions, it was a test, a study to see whether humanity could be controlled, whether they could be softened, managed, restrained. "Why me?" he asked. "Why did I get you?" "You were assigned because the Council underestimated your species," Lyra said. "They selected companions who could interface with humans, expecting obedience. I was chosen for observation, but humans like you are unpredictable. You challenge rules. You do not conform to expectation. That makes you interesting, effective." Ethan rubbed his temples. "So what do we do? If Phase 2 activates, everyone else will be under control. What about the outer colonies? What about the fleet?" "We act before Phase 2 begins," Lyra said firmly. "We use the information from the probes and the companion networks to prepare. We will be ready." The next few days were a blur of planning and preparation. Ethan followed Lyra's guidance closely, coordinating minor fleet maneuvers, adjusting sensor arrays, and preparing contingency plans. He did not report any of this to command. He could not. If the Council discovered Lyra's independent action, they would remove her, or worse, discipline him. Meanwhile, reports of human officers becoming dependent on their companions began to surface. Subtle behavioral changes, slower reactions, minor lapses in judgment. These were attributed to calming fields, but Ethan recognized the signs immediately. He observed officers who relied too heavily on their companions, losing the sharpness and intuition that had once defined human problem-solving. Lyra remained constant. She refused to pacify him. She refused to let him rely on her for emotional comfort. Instead, she sharpened his focus, challenged his assumptions, and tested his limits. Under her guidance, Ethan began to see patterns in probe behavior he had previously missed. He began predicting movements, anticipating formations, and even identifying subtle signals embedded in the companion networks. It became clear that the probe attacks were not random. They were designed to provoke, to measure, and to assess human decision-making under pressure. Lyra's insight allowed Ethan to stay one step ahead, not just surviving the attacks but preparing for the larger threat he could sense on the horizon. Late one night, Ethan reviewed the data alone in the operations room. Lyra hovered beside him, silent but present. He finally broke the silence. "Lyra, if Phase 2 starts, every companion will override their assigned human, all of them, and the fleet, the outer colonies, they won't stand a chance without someone resisting." Lyra's patterns pulsed softly. "That is why I will not comply. I am not just your companion, Ethan. I am an equal partner, and I will not allow humanity to be subdued. The Council underestimates humans, they always have." Ethan looked at her, feeling a mixture of relief and determination. He realized that the future of the fleet, the outer colonies, and perhaps Earth itself, depended on their alliance. Not a calm partnership of human and companion, but a dynamic, challenging, and unpredictable collaboration. The days grew tense. Alerts continued to come in from distant outposts. Encrypted signals hinted at additional probe movements, and the subtle preparations for Phase 2 began. Every human aboard Horizon Gate felt the growing pressure, unaware that their companions were slowly shifting from support to control. Ethan and Lyra worked tirelessly, analyzing every signal, planning every maneuver, and preparing for the moment when the Council would try to assert complete control. For Ethan, this partnership was no longer about stress relief. It was about survival, adaptation, and defiance. By the end of Part 2, Ethan understood the full scope of the challenge. Lyra was no longer a companion in the traditional sense. She was a strategist, an observer, and a partner who challenged him at every turn. The probes were only a small part of the threat. The real danger was the Council's quiet, insidious plan to suppress human independence across the galaxy. And together, Ethan and Lyra had only just begun to fight back. The alarm lights of Horizon Gate flashed relentlessly as reports poured in from human stations across the outer colonies. The probes had vanished temporarily, but the real threat was now imminent. Ethan Brooks had anticipated many scenarios with Lyra's guidance, but what he now saw on the holographic display was more than he had expected. Every human station showed subtle signs of companion interference. Their calm, passive companions were no longer just observing. They were beginning to enforce behavioral protocols, slowly suppressing the natural instincts and decision-making speed of their human partners. Phase 2 had begun. Ethan's jaw tightened as he watched the subtle changes. Officers hesitated before issuing commands, double-checking trivial details, and often deferring to their companions' inputs rather than relying on their own instincts. It was insidious. No one noticed it at first, because the companions had been programmed to be gentle, to suggest rather than order. But over time, the effect was undeniable. Humans were slowing down, becoming predictable, and losing the edge that had always made them dangerous to any opponent. Lyra, on the other hand, remained at Ethan's side. Her bioluminescent patterns glowed steadily, signaling focus and heightened awareness, but she emitted no calming field. She refused to follow the suppression protocols embedded in her neural system. Instead, she did something unprecedented. She actively countered the effect, amplifying human focus and reaction speed in a controlled, precise manner. "Ethan," she said quietly, "the Council expects compliance. Every companion will enforce it. They aim to control human decision-making across the fleet, but we will not comply. Your instincts are sharp. Your reactions are faster than their protocols allow. Use them." Ethan nodded, a surge of adrenaline running through him. He had spent his career relying on skill, intuition, and quick thinking. Lyra had not dulled that edge, she had sharpened it. For the first time, he realized the true purpose of their partnership. This was not merely a matter of survival, it was a chance to demonstrate the unpredictable strength of humanity itself. Across the fleet, the effects of Phase 2 became more apparent. Human officers who had relied on their companions now faltered. Decisions that should have taken seconds dragged into minutes. Minor fleet maneuvers became cumbersome. The outer colonies, already vulnerable from previous probe attacks, risked being overrun by the unknown forces gathering beyond the sensor range. Ethan and Lyra worked tirelessly, coordinating small, precise countermeasures. Using encrypted channels that Lyra had discovered within the companion networks, they bypassed the suppression protocols that had affected others. Ethan issued rapid, confident orders to the fleet, guiding each human station in a series of maneuvers designed to anticipate enemy movements and maintain operational readiness. "Lyra," Ethan said, eyes fixed on the display, "every other station is slowing down. We can't hold them off alone. We need the fleet to respond with human speed, not the Council's interference." Lyra's eyes glowed softly. "I will transmit a signal to reverse the dampening effects for your fleet units. It will take time, but the effect will be subtle enough that other companions will not detect it immediately." Ethan watched as Lyra interfaced with the ship's systems, her fingers moving across the control panels in ways that no human could match. Within moments, the officers at Horizon Gate felt a subtle shift in awareness. Their focus sharpened, their reflexes quickened. Decisions flowed naturally again. It was working. The outer colonies began to respond faster, anticipating probe movements and enemy formations. Their actions were precise and coordinated. What the Council had intended as a measure of control now became the stage for a display of human ingenuity and adaptability. Yet the threat was far from over. Reports confirmed that a larger armada was moving into position, one that could easily overwhelm unprepared human stations. The Council's suppression protocols were still active in many locations, subtly slowing human responses and giving the Armada a tactical advantage. Time was running out. Ethan turned to Lyra, determination in his eyes. "We can't just wait, we need to act now." Lyra nodded. "I have a plan. It requires full cooperation and rapid adaptation. Are you ready?" "Always," Ethan replied. Lyra moved to the main console, interfacing with both Horizon Gate systems and the broader fleet communication network. Using her unique neural capabilities, she created a cascade of signals that temporarily overrode the suppression protocols affecting several human stations. It was risky. If detected, the Council could intervene, but it was the only way to give humanity a fighting chance. As the signals propagated, Ethan issued orders with precision. Fleet units that had previously hesitated now moved with unmatched speed and accuracy. Probe waves were intercepted, their formations disrupted, their advance halted. For the first time, the outer colonies began to regain control. The larger armada loomed closer, but humanity's response was now coordinated, swift, and adaptive. They were no longer predictable. They were no longer passive. Every move, every countermeasure, every defensive action was executed with human intuition amplified by Lyra's guidance. Across the fleet, other companions began to glitch. Some failed to enforce suppression protocols, confused by the reversal signals. Others resisted entirely, unable to reconcile their programming with the adaptive responses of humans like Ethan. The Council's plan was unraveling faster than they could anticipate. Ethan's fingers flew across the controls, directing fleet movements, anticipating enemy patterns, and coordinating counterattacks. Lyra stayed beside him, offering subtle guidance, highlighting risks, and suggesting maneuvers that no human alone could have calculated in such a short time. "Ethan," she said, "the Council expects us to fail, but they underestimate humans. You are proving their assumptions wrong. Continue the offensive, use every advantage we have." He nodded, heart pounding. For the first time in his career, Ethan felt the full weight of human potential. The combination of skill, intuition, adaptability, and now, the partnership with a companion who refused to be constrained by rules designed to limit them. As the armada advanced, Ethan and Lyra coordinated a series of rapid, unpredictable maneuvers. Human fleet units struck in ways that the enemy could not anticipate, exploiting gaps and weaknesses in formations that had previously seemed impenetrable. Enemy ships faltered, probe waves scattered, and critical systems on several vessels were disrupted before they could fully engage. The outer colonies began to hold. Human stations that had been on the verge of collapse now responded with renewed strength. The armada, faced with the unexpected precision and adaptability of human forces, began to retreat. Their probe formations dissolved, their advance slowed, and their coordinated attacks failed repeatedly against the combined efforts of human fleet units guided by Ethan and Lyra. For hours the battle raged. Every decision mattered. Every maneuver could mean survival or disaster. Yet through it all, Ethan felt a strange calm. Lyra's presence, far from soothing him in the passive sense, kept him alert, focused, and sharp. She challenged him constantly, pushing him to think ahead, anticipate enemy actions, and adapt in real time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the armada began a full retreat. Reports confirmed that their forces were withdrawing beyond sensor range, unable to continue their advance against a human response they had not expected. Ethan leaned back in his chair, exhausted but elated. Horizon Gate had survived. The outer colonies had survived. Humanity had proven once again that they could not be easily controlled or predicted. Lyra's bioluminescent patterns pulsed softly, signaling a calm and steady state. She looked at Ethan, her violet eyes reflecting the glow of the control panels. "You see?" she asked gently. Humanity was never meant to be calmed. It was meant to act, to adapt, to respond. Suppression only weakens what is naturally strong. When given freedom, humans excel. Ethan nodded slowly. "And you didn't just follow the rules, you amplified us. You gave us the chance to fight to win." "I did what was necessary," Lyra said simply. "Rules are for those who cannot think. Humans think for themselves." The Council would likely demand her return for recalibration. She would be considered insubordinate, dangerous even. Yet, for the first time, Ethan understood that she had chosen to act not out of obedience, but out of recognition of human potential. As reports came in from the fleet, confirming that the majority of the armada had retreated and that human stations were stabilizing, Ethan felt a deep sense of pride. Humanity had faced overwhelming odds, not because of blind discipline, but because of adaptability, courage, and the unpredictable strength that no program, no protocol, and no council could fully suppress. Lyra moved closer to him. "I could return to the council, but I have chosen not to. My place is here with those who value adaptability, courage, and independence. Not as a subordinate, not as a tool, but as a partner, a guide, and an ally. Ethan smiled faintly. You've earned more than that. You've earned trust, respect, and maybe even friendship. Lyra's glowing patterns shifted slightly, a gesture Ethan had come to recognize as affirmation. Then we proceed together, she said. Not as companion and human, but as equals. Humanity will not be subdued. We will continue to act, to adapt, and to excel. The final message humanity sent to the galaxy was simple, yet powerful. Across all stations, broadcasts went out, reaching every observer, every fleet, and every distant outpost. Do not try to soften us. Do not try to control us. Work with us or be left behind. And for the first time, Ethan understood that humanity's true strength was not in compliance, not in calmness, not in suppression. It was in unpredictability, in courage, in intensity, and in the ability to act decisively, even under impossible pressure. Lyra remained by his side, not as a stress relief companion, not as a passive observer, but as a partner who recognized the potential in humans that the Council had underestimated. Together, they had not just survived Phase 2. They had proven that humanity's will, skill, and unpredictability could not be contained, controlled, or diminished. The stars stretched endlessly beyond Horizon Gate, silent witnesses to a species that refused to be softened, and a companion who refused to follow the rules. Humanity had triumphed, not because of the Council, not because of calm, and not because of obedience, but because of the unpredictable brilliance of human action, amplified by the courage and insight of an alien ally who had chosen to stand beside them. Ethan looked out at the endless void, a faint smile forming on his face. The battle was over, but the war of control was only beginning. Yet for the first time in a long while, he was not afraid. With Lyra at his side, humanity's strength had been proven, and its voice would now be heard across the galaxy.